Some of these things may seem like crazy ideas to you, but I really think that we need to discuss them, especially stay with me till we get to number one. But I think that these are things that you and I need to be talking about. And it's up to you, your church leadership. But are some of these things issues or tools that you should begin to be looking at? And I think that we should all be looking at the different possibilities. It's beyond this year, it's going into the next several years, but we need to consider what's out there and what we should be trying to budget for or trying to implement in our programs and our church security programs. So let's get started here. And I think, some of the first stuff we can talk about at number 8 is community engagement. And, the first thing that comes to mind for me is neighborhood watch programs. How involved are you in that? Watching out for the neighbors. Those may be homes, those may be other businesses, depending on where you're located, but organize some of that. Get people looking out for you, notifying the police if there's something wrong. And we're doing the same for those folks as well. And, there are a lot of neighborhood watch programs. Whether you're in the United States, Canada, some of the other countries have some as well, depending on where you're watching from. And there's a lot of them. We look at the numbers here that I've got posted. In California, you've got over 3,800 of those programs, registered neighborhood watch programs. Florida, 2,400. Texas, 1,400. So there's plenty of these programs out there for us to take a look at and to get involved in, to kind of have some extra eyes and ears in the process of taking care of our church and taking care of the surroundings and the neighborhood around our church. Collaborating with local law enforcement, I think that's a huge deal that we overlook. And sometimes it's kind of tough, depending on the community you're in. Law enforcement may not be as acceptable to collaborating with you because they're busy. They're already taxed with their time and projects and lots of crime. So what can we do to interact with them and to benefit ourselves? And here's something that I just love that I'm going to be looking at more and more in the future, and that's this flock safety software and program. It's a great neighborhood security system, solar powered cameras. And these cameras can be pretty tech oriented. In fact, having some license plate analysis software, as well as gathering vehicle data and stuff. So these are some pretty high tech stuff. And the cost may blow you away, but I can tell you from being in law enforcement that these technology systems like this, they're available. License plate reader information and software and computers. But when I left law enforcement, they were in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you look at this stuff, we're talking about $2,500 per camera per year, with a $150 to $650 setup initial fee. But that includes the cellular service, software, analytics, hardware, ongoing maintenance, as well as they host the footage. So this is something I think that we should look at. We can put it on our property, and it helps protect our property, because a lot of our issues are relative to vehicles. So gathering vehicle data and license plates and that kind of thing can be relative to all kinds of things going on at our church, in our church, or around our church. So yeah, are we helping the neighborhood? Yes. Are we helping the police? This is a cool thing. This helps us collaborate with law enforcement, because in some cases, depending on your town or location, they may not be able to afford to do this, or unless they have a partner, they can't afford to do it. And there might even be some grants available. If you look at those security related grants, might even pay for this stuff. And how cool, what a tool that you can collaborate with law enforcement. They can't argue with this tool of gathering data and gathering information of people moving around your church. And, maybe you're putting it on the parking lot, but it also gathers a little bit of data off the street as well. So as the cars pass by on the street in front of the church or beside the church. I love this. I love this flock safety idea. So Mass safety notifications. If we go to number 7, crisis communication strategies, I think in the future, probably sooner rather than later, we need to be looking at, do you have a mass notification system? And it could be as simple as the text in church program, which is made to communicate with your people and, send invites to church and send the notifications of events going on and stuff. But you could also use that to tell everybody to get away or to flee the campus or whatever that might be. And I'm just throwing some things out to you. But we could use this in some sort of notification system. You can use it for, hey, there's too much snow, or we're not holding services this week. But you could also use it for, the ideas of escape, get away, those kind of things. If there's something going on your campus, especially if you have a bigger campus. There's alert media as well. I'll mention that a couple times. It's a much more in-depth service related to mass notifications for more emergency type strategies, as well as I see it as in my research. I think as part of our crisis communication strategies, going along with mass notification systems, we need to talk about emergency communication protocols, and having that plan. And that plan is basically giving guidelines, to those who can access the software. When are we going to send out a mass notice for what? And what's going to be the plan that we're giving to people as we send out this notice? Is it just stay away from the church because we got an event going on, or flee the church, or what does that look like? And so, I think that's future things. Most of us are still struggling with the idea of, I just need a team and I just need people here on Saturday or Sunday whenever we're holding our services. But we also got to be looking in the future where we can, as far as getting more details of our emergency plans and how we can try to protect people even more by sending notifications. And, and that can include after the fact. And I think this is something we should be looking at sooner rather than later. And that's public relations communication, preparing for an event that occurs at the church. Because negative events at the church can strongly impair your operation. It can even close the church down. So if you have some sort of abuse situation, or you have some sort of domestic violence situation that goes wrong, or we do something and we don't do it perfectly, all of a sudden we can be criticized for it. And you want to have somebody that's a little bit trained, that's in place, that can start coming out with press releases and communication for the negative stuff, so that you can try to make sure and soften that negative message that others might be putting out, and be ready to put your own message out there. And I would recommend that you're beginning to look at some of these things, even as tough as it is, looking into the future. And I'm not saying it has to be done today. I'm really just giving you my opinions of what I see out there. But I think it's important opinions for us to all, including myself, to pay attention to this stuff and what we should be trying to work on as next steps for the future. And, I don't think things are going to get any better when it comes to security or complications for our ministry or difficulties, challenges. So I think you and I need to continually be trying to step up our game with this stuff. Collaboration with consultants and professionals. And as number 6 in my list, I think that we need to, with professionals, we need to conduct risk assessments. What do we have issues with? And I've got a little list here. What are potential hazards? Who's at risk from those potential hazards? And what are we going to do about it? That's what it comes down to. And, and if necessary, get together with a professional. If you have somebody that's been a professional that's on your team, that's retired now, or has left that work, try to incorporate them. Otherwise, try to include your fire marshals or fire inspectors or community service officers in law enforcement, or those crime prevention officers in law enforcement. We want to try to include them in helping us analyze some of this stuff, or reach out to other folks, reach out to our team as well, and try to get some assistance with identifying some of these and figuring out what we can do. Developing security plans. I'm not one for having the writing in place before you start a team. I want to see you have a team. That's always been my opinion, and I've shared that numerous times on this channel. But I do think there's a point where we need to have plans for what are we going to do if this happens? What are we going to do if that happens? And I think that kind of stuff is very important. So, and if you can get that expert involved and get some planning for your specific church, where your doors are, where your people meet, the layout, all of that kind of stuff, that is important for us to look at in the future. And again, I'm giving you opinions on this stuff, my opinions, but I think these are things that we got, as much as it might stretch us to do that. And that's why I'm talking about for the future is these things. Some of this stuff should be on our list, and we should be looking at how are we going to incorporate this stuff in the future, especially with my limited time, limited people, limited resources, whatever that looks like. We still got to be looking to the future because things are going to get more challenging for us. Then we look at number 5 is active threat training, situational training for more of the volunteers. We're maybe focused a lot of times on our immediate security team. Let's get them trained. And I know how that is. It's the same at my church, trying to get just the basic folks trained. The greeters who are on the perimeter of our building, standing at the doorways, they need to be trained. Our ushers are moving around within the perimeter and sometimes have other duties as well. So they kind of need to be trained. And some of them may even be cross-trained with security. And then we've got our security folks that need to be trained. And I know we're constantly having those people in and out of our programs, resigning and moving to other things, or getting overrun with other activities or things that they need to do. But we've got to start looking at other folks too, as well as how can we expand this safety and security plan, with our worship team, with our teachers, and, those who work in our kids programs, and even our adult teachers and other volunteers, coffee shop workers, help desk, media team, people running computers and sound systems and stuff. We still need to try to expand where we get training for those folks as well, and continually try to expand that. And I think this is very important, and this is something that's doable. Whatever you've been doing for training for your people, we can expand and share that with these other teams and other team members. So you have more and more people who are trained to deal with the active threat and what their role and what they can do. We want to, I believe in the future, empower more people to help and respond to those emergency situations. The more we can do that, the better off we'll be in the future, as things probably continue to be more challenging for us. So we want to get ahead of that. And number 4, statistical driven decisions. Start looking more at the data, start looking at what's going on out there. And I believe, we can use Google Alerts, and there's other systems out there, but you can put in your keywords that you want to be notified if something happens, whether it's a shooting at a church or a theft at a church or a stabbing at a church. You can put those words in there and be ready to change a little bit. I've seen us, we had an active shooter going on that actually shot at a church here a few years ago. And so what did we do? We adapted. We moved somebody outside for the entire service that was armed, and we moved them out in the parking lot where they were watching the street, as well as watching for what was going on in the parking lot. So we added basically a position, a situation, showed we needed that. So we were having an actual active shooter in the region, shot at a church, then shot at some other businesses as well. And so it was an ongoing thing. So we paid attention to that and we adapted to that situation that was going on. So monitor trends, applying that at a week to week type situation, and be ready to change or improve church security protocols and by the data. And it looks like my slide's a little messed up, but the Bureau of Justice Statistics, complicated sometimes to get information there, but it's all data, statistics that come from police reports, and you can scour that and see what the trends are. And we've done a couple of shows that we talk about the data that's coming out of the Bureau of Justice Statistics. What does it show you? The current trend has always been for the last 20 years, as I look at the data, has been that the majority of issues happen before and after our services outside in our parking lots or on our sidewalks or in the street right out front. So, we look at that, and that's why we're training on, and we discuss, we need to have people out in the parking lot as much as possible doing patrols or hanging out in the parking lot, whatever that looks like, because the data tells us that there's more stuff happening outside than there is actually inside of our church. So you want to be able to monitor that data and make your decisions, however you choose to do that, and be ready to make adjustments in that area. Access control at number 3 to our facilities and our, communication tools, smart locks, biometrics, I think are things that we need to look at for the future. How can we program and deprogram our locks? This is great. Instead of passing out a bunch of keys, and we probably give out too many keys, to be honest, instead of just passing out all those keys to people, and then when somebody leaves the church trying to figure out how to get it back, or now we got to change the locks if they were a person who had access to too many things and we're concerned, then we've got to go get those back. And with these systems, we can begin to just lock that person out and remove them from access with these digital products, if you will. So with their key code, giving everybody different key codes, or whether we use biometrics or we use connections through our cell phones and apps like that kind of thing. So I would strongly recommend that you're looking at these kinds of issues, if you will. And then I think, and this is going to be one area where some of you may get a little bit heavy with me. And because this kind of starts going against the grain of church being open. The doors are open. People can come in. That's what we're used to. And you should be with your team starting to kind of slow that down a little bit, where you're contacting visitors and you're talking with them and you're kind of screening them a little bit. And it's a friendly screening, but we're beginning to look at that more. I think that we've got to look at this idea in the future, my opinion, where we're beginning to analyze everyone that's coming through the door. Visitor management software that's normally right now it's used in corporations and manufacturing and retail, different areas. But I think that we've got to look at the future of identifying people and getting them to be identified. So basically, everybody comes through the door is either a visitor, and we need more information on them than to enter them into the database to allow them to visit, or they're a regular person and they're just checking in via one of these kiosks or systems whenever they come through the door. And some of those can be a little bit more automated with the cell phone, with the smartphone. Now, there's different companies out there. Many of you may use Planning Center already, but their system is just a voluntary check-in. So I think in the future, we're going to need something a little bit stronger that's adapted. And this is where you got to open your mind a little bit. It's not made just for a church. It's made for these other groups like Greetly or Envoy, which is, making things nice. Envoy seems like a good program. I have not used it, but it seems like it's seamless to get people through the door and to sign up visitors very quickly and identify who they are. And honestly, I think this is going to be something you and I need to look at in the future, is engaging these people and tracking who's at church. And then, boy, my slides are just really messed up. Mobile security apps, emergency notifications. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but that Text in Church program uh, is a great program, and you may look at others for some of those purposes. And, for things to coordinate between security folks, we really, need to look at also notifying the security, which you can do that through Text in Church. You can set up a separate group, but you may also want to look at something else like that alert media that we talked about previously. I can't do a future trends, church security trends, without number 2 here, which is enhancing our cybersecurity measures. If we add more data, meaning we're getting visitors checking in and we're identifying new people and putting them into systems, we're going to have to protect that data somehow. So we've got to be looking at that. And you have your traditional things that you can do, multi-factor authentication, updating your software, thinking before you click, those standard things. But I think that we're going to need some way to protect this data that we're gathering. And because I do believe it's the future, we should be looking at it as well as protecting our financial transactions and those kind of things. There's all this, cyber stuff that's going on, ransomware. I mean, there's those kind of things, but there's also just smaller issues as well that can plague us when it comes to our cyber security and protecting the data and protecting our people. We really don't want, it can be another negative thing if all of a sudden our data is breached and we're making everybody check in, check out. We're making visitors check in with us and getting their information, which is, by the way, is a great way to help screen them and spend some more time with them too, to see if they should be coming in. But basically, you and I need to be protecting this stuff, because if we were to have a breach of that information, that would be a negative as well, that we would have to bring somebody out, do some press releases, talk to the media, and try to calm that situation. So we want to try to protect that information. And it just, really exploring under enhancing our cybersecurity measures, we need to explore platforms that protect against cyber attacks realistically. And then there's, we're getting into artificial intelligence. You should be hearing all that. And at number 1, I think that this is something that you and I should be looking at. I'm starting to look at it. I think that you and I should be looking at this stuff and how it can help our security plans. And one of those is at this advanced threat detection stuff. They're using it in government buildings, in schools, this is my understanding from reading and from studying this stuff and listening to some of their information. But this advanced threat detection stuff, where they can even use your already existing cameras in your system and tap into that. But a company called Zero Eyes is one that I've been studying, and I hope to maybe have them on a podcast at some point. But basically, their software can detect what seems to be a gun, somebody walking with something. I'm understanding it can also detect maybe how they're walking and maybe something under their clothing as well. And this can begin to alert their folks, and they monitor your cameras. They monitor the systems. When these alerts come up, they'll contact you. They'll contact law enforcement, that kind of stuff. So very intelligent software for detecting threats of violence or threat intruders. You've got the facial recognition software and equipment. A company called FaceMe is one of those that I've looked at and studied quite a bit. And I kind of tend to lean in their direction for the facial recognition, not the threat detection, but the facial recognition. And they are doing a great job, it looks like, for different areas. And they can do different things with their recognition software and equipment. So I would challenge you to start looking at that, where we can then see, especially if we've had a problem person, we can help to identify that, log that. And now if that person comes through the doors, we're immediately notified of that situation. So, and these are things that may collaborate with other software in your region in the future as well, to where now if somebody's been evicted from somewhere else or been banned or trespassed, you might call it, then that may interact with your system as well and tell you that they've been uh, trespassed or denied access at a different location. And so you should pay attention to them. So there may be some of that going on in the future. And I do think we need behavioral analysis training for our people, formal training for our greeters, for our security, more in depth on behavioral analysis and what to look for with somebody that's suspicious, what to look for with somebody that may be dangerous as well. And I think that we need to look at that fairly soon in the future so that we're giving them some more tools to help us with the security plan. So those are the things. Artificial intelligence, I think, is going to be a big deal that we do want to take advantage of for the future. And it's going to be harder. You know, that's the other thing that my pastors mentioned, which is very wise, is that, you know, we can't just wait for this stuff and then expect to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars all at once. We need to begin to look at it and begin to implement the systems where maybe we can do it just a little bit at a time and build up to that system. And I think that's very wise ideas, very wise knowledge. So things to think about is what I'm saying here. This is my opinions, my thoughts from my research. I just want to give you some things to think about. And you can disagree with me. You can say that's crazy idea, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. Send me a note, leave me a comment. But what I am doing is challenging you for your circumstances, for your ministry. Are some of these things something that you should be looking at? They're things for you to research. Come up with your own thoughts. I'm just giving you some ideas, some challenges. And is it viable for you to start saving for these things and start implementing these programs? That's what I'm trying to do, is give you some food for thought for the future and give you some challenges. So thanks for being here. I hope you'll like and subscribe this channel because I'd like to have you joining us. I'd love to have your comments, your interaction with this community, and then take a look at this next video because it'll have some more great information for you to pursue.